Welcome back to the program. First and foremost, from yesterday's video, I answered every single one of your comments back, so please go back and check what I replied. I'm going to do something a little bit different on this show. I have known Roger Stone for many, many years, and he's been on my show at least 4 times. And of course, he, endorsed my book, Preserving Liberty, as well. But he's also someone that has been involved in politics for, since he was 20 years old. He's 72, so the majority of his entire life. And he's worked for 4 different presidents. And one president in particular was Richard Nixon. We know that Roger has a giant Richard Nixon tattoo in the center of his back. Richard Nixon and him were extremely close. Not just when he was, of course, the president for a while, but it was after they stayed in contact, and he was basically, as Richard Nixon would say, Roger was my man in D.C. And they would get together, and they would talk, and they would hang out, and he's known him for years. So what I'm about to share with you comes from the great Roger Stone, an amazing person, an incredible patriot, and somebody that is never going to bore you with some of the things that he does, but always in good fun and always to be able to win. Now, we saw the drop from the JFK files, and I have reported on it here. It was pretty much a nothing burger with extra cheese. There wasn't a lot there. The only thing that you could say that you could really glean from it was the fact that clearly the CIA was involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr. In addition to that, when President Trump was asked just the other day, who do you think killed JFK? He immediately said, well, all the information and the 88,000 pages are there for anyone to look through, and you can decide for yourself. But he also mentioned the fact that the, quote, CIA helped. That's from President Trump. That's not from me. That's not from anyone else. That is from President Trump. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go over something that Roger Stone put out. And I would trust Roger Stone knowing what's going on more than any political operative in Washington or, for that matter, around the country. He has been right on so many different things, and he is highly intelligent. So I'm going to be reading something to you. These are the things that are missing from the quote-unquote official JFK files. This is going to be long, but I will try to get through it as quickly as I can. Alcohol was an unpredictable elixir for Richard Nixon, is how he starts. After several very dry martinis, which he proudly claimed that Winston Churchill himself taught him to make, the former president could become talkative, quiet, or perhaps contemplative. During these moments, Nixon often drifted into memories of the past. As one of his closest confidants in his later years, I grew accustomed to these nightly sojourns. One evening, at his New Jersey home, stands out clearly in my memory. Nixon's 4-acre property in Upper Saddle River, beautiful area, by the way, in New Jersey, sat hidden on a private wooded leafy lot, a perfect retreat where he wrote his books, hosted foreign dignitaries, and walked his dog Brownie. That night, he slouched in his leather armchair, right arm propped up, fingers wrapped around the stem of his martini glass. After a moment of silence, perhaps emboldened by the hour and the trust that he had developed between us, I screwed up my confidence and asked the question that haunted a generation. Mr. President, who really did kill John F. Kennedy? He stared intently into his glass. He replied, "Let me say this. The Warren Commission was the biggest goddamn hoax in American history." I was startled. "I'm sorry, sir, what did you just say?" I replied. "That was the difference between Lyndon and me," he replied. Nixon said suddenly, "I wasn't willing to kill for it." End quote. He fell silent. I waited. Then he continued, speaking about Jack Ruby, the man who killed President Kennedy's assassin. "I actually knew Ruby. Murray Chotiner introduced him back in '47. This is now, of course, Richard Nixon speaking. He went by Rubenstein then, an informant. Murray said he was one of Lyndon's people. We put him on the payroll at Lyndon's request." Chotiner, the political mastermind behind Nixon's meteoric rise from leaving the Navy in 1946 to Vice President of the United States in only 6 years, was a hardened defense attorney who had been hired by LA mob boss Mickey Cohn before venturing into politics. The Kennedy assassination had always haunted Nixon, especially after he himself became president. He believed that elements within our intelligence agencies, organized crime, and the highest reaches of our government had all conspired in planning of Kennedy's death. But above all, he believed that Lee Harvey Oswald was an unwilling simpleton who was swept away in an inexorable tide of nefarious activity. In short, he was indeed a patsy. White House Domestic Policy Chief John Ehrlichman wrote that when he served as the White House legal counsel, Nixon ordered him to request that the CIA hand over all documents pertaining to John F. Kennedy's murder. Nixon was absolutely furious when Richard Helms, the CIA director at that time, had flat out refused. Nixon knew the plot to kill JFK went well beyond just Lyndon Johnson. In fact, history records a stunning, long-overlooked Nixon-Watergate-era tape showing Richard Nixon warning CIA Director Richard Helms that he knows of LBJ's and the CIA's involvement in the murder of John F. Kennedy. In one heated exchange with Helms, Nixon blurted out, "I know who shot John." This stunning Watergate-era tape captures an increasingly besieged Nixon desperately seeking to mobilize the CIA in his defense by threatening to expose their greatest secret. After Nixon's revelations, I began investigating the assassination, publishing my findings in the New York Times best-selling book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy: The Case Against LBJ, which reached national acclaim in 2013. Despite numerous document releases over the last 6 decades, the most recent being just last week, the complete truth about Kennedy's death still remains obscured, with critical questions still left unanswered. For instance, Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged lone gunman at the center of the Kennedy assassination narrative, famously proclaimed to the media upon his arrest that he was indeed a patsy. According to the Warren Commission report, Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, with the 2nd and 3rd striking Kennedy. Even this basic yet essential finding is problematic. For example, one of the most striking omissions in the official record concerns a critical piece of forensic evidence: the paraffin test conducted on Oswald after his arrest. The Dallas Police Department's examination revealed that Oswald had no powder burns on his chest, on his arms, or on his hands, something that absolutely would have been present on someone who allegedly fired a weapon from a sniper's position. In addition, the paraffin test revealed no residue of nitrates contained in the powders and gases when a weapon is fired were on Oswald's cheeks. These findings directly contradict the official narrative of the Warren Commission that Oswald fired a rifle multiple times that day. In fact, one could even argue that the absence of powder residue strongly suggests that Oswald may not have fired a weapon at all during that fateful day. This crucial piece of exculpatory evidence was quickly dismissed by the Warren Commission, which relied instead on circumstantial evidence and questionable witness testimony to build its case against Oswald. The Commission's willingness to overlook such fundamental inconsistencies raises serious questions about the integrity of the entire Warren Commission investigation. Let me just add right there, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorist, that was created and coined by the CIA because anyone that disagreed with the official narrative of the Warren Commission's findings was called a conspiracy theorist. Further compounding these issues is the weapon itself. The Warren Commission alleged that Oswald used a $26 World War II vintage Italian carbine rifle to carry out the assassination. Deputy Constable Seymour Weitzman and Deputy Sheriff Eugene Boone, both with vast knowledge of firearms, found the weapon on the 6th floor and claimed that it was a Mauser, a German rifle, with Weitzman reiterating this in an official affidavit. Deputy Dallas Sheriff Roger Craig, also present on the scene, reaffirmed the discovery of a Mauser and noted a 7.65 Mauser stamp on the barrel of the weapon. The problem with this discovery was that Oswald did not own a Mauser rifle. Even if Oswald had used an Italian inferior rifle, experts question whether Oswald could have fired the weapon effectively, given its reputation for inaccuracy and the tight time frame of 5.6 seconds for 3 shots. When the Warren Commission had 3 master marksmen recreate the Kennedy shooting, only one managed the timing, and absolutely none hit the head or neck of the target. Yet we are all supposed to believe that Oswald acted alone, a lone gunman who once discharged a loaded pistol in his Marine barracks, scored poorly on his final rifle test, could barely drive a car, and lost his previous job for incompetence before working at the Texas School Book Depository. The latest document dump also contains this illuminating nugget of truth. The Russian Security Service, the KGB, also determined that Oswald was, quote, a terrible shot during his time in the Soviet Union, further validating his Marine Corps test results. Let's also look at Oswald's demeanor after allegedly killing the president. Oswald left his alleged sniper's nest seemingly unhurried and unbothered. Only a minute after the shooting, Oswald was encountered by Dallas police officer Marion L. Baker and Texas School Book Depository Superintendent Roy Truly in the 2nd floor lunchroom, 4 floors below. Both men testified at that time that Oswald appeared calm, cool, and collected, neither out of breath nor agitated. As Truly testified to the Warren Commission, quote, Oswald didn't seem to be excited, out of breath, or overly afraid of anything. He might have been startled, like I might have been if someone confronted me, but I cannot recall any change in expression or any kind on his face, end quote. Officer Baker similarly testified that Oswald, quote, appeared normal and was, quote, calm and collected. This behavior seems wholly inconsistent with someone who had just allegedly assassinated the President of the United States and fled down 4 flights of stairs in a matter of mere seconds. Moreover, another eyewitness clerical supervisor, Miss Roberta Reed, who saw Oswald walking through her 2nd floor office moments later, described him as, quote, just calm and, quote, moving at a very slow and reasonable pace, end quote. Miss Reed emphasized that this was consistent with Oswald's everyday demeanor. These first-hand witnesses' accounts directly contradict what one would expect from an assassin making his escape. The recently released documents fail to address any of these fundamental inconsistencies, leaving researchers to question why the official investigation so readily dismissed them. Perhaps the most compelling evidence undermining the lone gunman theory lies in Oswald's connection to U.S. intelligence agencies, and in particular, the Central Intelligence Agency. Far from being a, quote, disaffected loner, Oswald appears to have been a carefully cultivated intelligence asset with connections to high-level operatives. Jane Roman, a retired CIA officer who signed many of the agency's documents concerning Oswald prior to the assassination, admitted in an interview with researcher Jefferson Morley and former U.S. Army intelligence officer John Newman that the CIA had, quote, a keen interest in Oswald held very closely on a need-to-know basis. When confronted with evidence that she had signed off on documents that misrepresented the CIA's knowledge of Oswald, Roman acknowledged, quote, yes, it's true. I signed off on documents that I knew were not true, end quote. This frank admission from a mid-level CIA insider strongly indicates that Oswald was being monitored and potentially manipulated by intelligence agencies in the months leading up to the assassination. Yet, the full extent of these connections remains unknown. Why did CIA agent Jane Roman lie about Oswald? And more importantly, who above her made her do it? Perhaps one of the most disturbing aspects of the Kennedy assassination case involves multiple instances of Oswald being impersonated. That's right, impersonated. I talked about Ruth Paine and Michael Paine and how Michael Paine, Ruth Paine's husband, looks very, very similar to Oswald in the video that I did a couple of days ago when this all broke, right? Multiple instances of Oswald being impersonated in the months leading up to the assassination. These impersonations suggest a sophisticated intelligence operation designed to create a trail of evidence implicating and framing Lee Harvey Oswald. J. Edgar Hoover himself, the director of the FBI at that time, acknowledged that this phenomenon in a recorded phone call conversation with President Lyndon Baines Johnson the day after the assassination. Quote, Lyndon, we have the tape and the photograph of the man, this is J. Edgar Hoover telling Lyndon, Lyndon, we have the tape and the photograph of the man who was at the Soviet embassy using Oswald's name, Hoover told Johnson. Our picture and the tape do not correspond to Oswald's voice, nor does it resemble his appearance. In other words, it appears that there is a second person who is at the Soviet embassy down there, end quote. Even more remarkably, Director Hoover had written to the State Department's Office of Security concerning the possibility of Oswald doppelgangers and identity theft as early as June of 1960. Quote, there is a possibility that there is an imposter using Oswald's birth certificate, so any current information the Department of State has concerning this matter will be appreciated, end quote. The phenomenon of Oswald imposters appeared repeatedly in the fall of 1963. In September, while the real Oswald was in Mexico City, another, quote, Oswald appeared at the Dallas area apartment of Cuban exile Sylvia Odio, ranting about assassinating Kennedy. On November 9th, 1963, while Oswald was with his wife at Ruth Paine's house, there's that Ruth Paine again, Oswald's imposters were seen applying for a job at the Dallas Southland Hotel, test driving a car at a Dallas Lincoln Mercury dealership as well. These incidents strongly suggest a coordinated effort to create a public profile of Lee Harvey Oswald as, quote, unstable, violent, and capable of assassination. Finally, there's the Dallas Police Department. The role of local law enforcement in potentially facilitating the assassination and framing of Oswald deserves greater scrutiny. One particular suspicious incident occurred while Oswald was at his rooming house shortly after the assassination. The housekeeper, Earlene Roberts, testified that while Oswald was in his room, a police car stopped in front of the house and honked its horn. Roberts, who knew several policemen, did not recognize this officer. Shortly thereafter, Oswald left the house and allegedly proceeded to kill Officer J.D. Tippit before being diverted to the Texas Theater where he was arrested. The unidentified police car suggests possible police involvement in tipping off or directing Oswald's movements after the assassination. Former Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry, who did not leave Lyndon Johnson's side in the days following the assassination, later expressed doubt about Oswald's movements, stating, "I can't in my mind firmly make myself believe that he might not have been trying to get to Jack Ruby's apartment. You know he was in close proximity to it, and I know he didn't leave his house with the idea of going to that Texas theater." End quote. Police Chief Curry even acknowledged the possibility of a conspiracy. Quote, "There's been coincidental things that have happened here to lead one to believe that there could have been a conspiracy after all. There might have been a connection between the two, Oswald and Ruby, that we never established. And if there was, it was more than just a local thing, I believe." End quote. Police Chief Curry's later admissions may have stemmed from guilt. He had overseen motorcade planning and local security, only to discover too late that the Secret Service had removed protective details from Dealey Plaza before the assassination occurred. Gee, where have we ever heard about removing protective details recently? I don't know. How about July 13th of 2024 in Butler, Pennsylvania? Thank you very much. In conclusion, until all documents are fully released and unredacted in their entirety, and a truly independent investigation re-examines the evidence without political constraints, the truth about who killed John F. Kennedy and why will remain one of America's most closely guarded secrets. Here's the thing. There are plenty of documents still outstanding. And when they come out, or if they ever come out, I don't know. I think, and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it until I'm proven otherwise, Lyndon Baines Johnson killed JFK with the help of the CIA. I've said it before. Lyndon Baines Johnson and Clifton Carter, I think his name was, or Collins, one of those two, was a close advisor and was the head of the DNC. And he was told by Lyndon Baines Johnson to hire a hitman, Malcolm Mac Wallace, who I believe probably was one of the shooters. No way was this a lone gunman, and no way was it Lee Harvey Oswald. There was definitely more than one shooter. And who? Well, I think Malcolm Mac Wallace is probably one of them, but who are the others? Because nobody can shoot a president like that in the car from that distance who had a terrible record of shooting. That's number one. And number two, it doesn't make any sense. No powder burns, no nothing. The guns didn't match up. This is a conspiracy that is still ongoing after 62 years. Your government is continuously lying to you. And for what reason? I don't know, because most of these people are already gone, dead, and buried. So when is this going to come out? Is there anybody in the Trump administration that has these actual leftover documents that they're still holding on to, and they want to do a good deed for the American public and just leak them? Please do it. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.